All right, welcome back. We are INFR3335U, Social and Multiplayer Game Design in the fall 2021 semester at Ontario Tech University. And it's week 3, part 3 of our broadcast, a little video that I'm making. And this video is all around how to create some scene management, simple scene management with Unity, and how to use something like LD Player as a mobile target. All right, so let's do this first. So first things first, I want to launch Unity Hub. And my version of Unity Hub is the beta version. I'm not sure if you guys are doing this. So those people who are, again, this is the tech demo piece for today. And I'm only going to do this once in a while, again, because I fully expect that the TA is capable of doing everything for you. So if you notice, I'm using Unity Hub version 3 beta 4. Okay, and that's why I'm getting this dark version of the Unity Hub. But again, whether you use this version or whether you use the regular Unity Hub version, it doesn't matter. I just think that this version is a little better. I think Unity's done a really great job into making it more interactive, and they've really laid it out a lot differently than the original version. So it's totally safe to use, and I highly recommend it. Okay, installs. From an install perspective, you should be using 2021 1.19F1. That's the version that I asked the TA, our friend Steven, to put together for you. Notice I have Android, Mac OS, UWP, WebGL, iOS, and Windows all installed in this thing. Do you need all these things? No, you don't. All you need is Windows and WebGL for now. I highly recommend downloading and installing Android as well, because you're going to be having a mobile build target later on this semester. Okay, so that's something that I recommend. So I'm using this version of Unity, 2021 1.19F1. Let's make a new project, and I'm going to share this with you through GitHub. Jonathan says I have 21.1.20. That's okay, but that means that things that you might get from the TA, as an example, might be something that you upgrade every single time. And sometimes when you give them stuff, Stephen, then what ends up happening is that your version is slightly different than his. Remember that you can, from an install perspective, if you want to match my version or Stephen's version, you can always go to if you go to the official releases page or the pre-releases page, it's there, but there's also a way when it comes to the editor. If I go install editor, you can see under the editor archive that I can always go to the download archive for all versions of Unity from Unity 3.x to now, right? So this is the link that you would need for that. Let me just put that on the chat. So this is the link for all versions of Unity if you wanted to install 2021.1.19F1. And you can get that version and install it on your machine. All right, so this is the version I want. I'm going to make a new project, and let's make the new project, and we'll call it something that's decent. I'm going to be using one thing to note is whenever we download the project, there's a bunch of templates, and you should have known, you should already got this. One of them is if I choose the right version, I've got several versions installed. 2021 1.19F1 is the one I want to use. And I have a 2D mobile installed, but maybe you don't have, or you might have the 3D mobile version right here, 3D mobile, right? So I'm going to grab this one. And all I need to do is download this template, and then it allows me to have that available for me for this version of Unity anytime I want. From now on, the project name should be something that we're doing today. So it's INFR3335U, and it's, again, fall 2021 semester, and it's usually like lesson 3 is what I normally use for my coding. And I like to put it somewhere that makes sense for us. So on the desktop, typically what I would do is put this on a place like Ontario Tech. Let's put that in there. So let's use INFR3335U, right, as a kind of containing folder, and put it in there. So that's where it's going to go. So anything we do together, it'll be kind of organized like that. Let's create the project. When you first create the project, like you've seen before, it's going to take a bunch of time to come up. One thing to note is that the library folder is being created at the same time, as an example, as you're creating all the stuff. It's pulling everything in from the package manager so that it makes your Unity version usable. Okay, that's what's happening right now. So that's why initially when you launch Unity, it takes a long time, but once you have the project, since everything's downloaded, all your packages have been downloaded, it takes a lot less time for you to kind of launch your project and run it. At the same time that I'm doing this, I've downloaded LD Player, and I recommend LD Player as the emulator of choice for us to use. Some people like to use BlueStacks. Some people like to use other, emulators. And here's a question for you. What's the difference between an emulator and a simulator? Anyone know? This could be for anybody technical, for the technical people out there. What's the difference? So one thing to note is that a simulator, for those people who are trying to answer or not, a simulator is something that's running inside of Unity a lot of times, and it doesn't really reflect the device that you're attempting to build for. All right, as an example. So a good example of that is the simulator that's in Unity or the simulator that's in Xcode if you're building for iOS. It's not a real device. An emulator is a lot different in that for you to run an emulator like LD Player, there's a couple of requirements. One of them is you must have virtualization enabled on your machine. If you don't have virtualization enabled on your machine, it's not going to run. All right, it will always have a problem running. And the second thing is once you download and install LD Player, in the background it installs something like VirtualBox, which is a virtualization engine that allows you to host a client or a guest operating system within Windows. Okay, that's what happens. You can also run, of course, LD Player on a Mac, no problem. All right, so let's make a proper layout. By default, what we get a lot of times when we make a layout is something that looks like this, and I'm sure Stephen has talked to you about making different layouts. I want to make a layout that is mobile-centric. One thing that Unity 2021.1.19F1 comes with is a change to the way we can choose the simulator that's right here installed inside the game preview. That's what it does, right? So I'd like to make a different editor, and a lot of times I start with something that looks like it's tall, all right, like this. And when I talk to my friends about this, I'm like, oh, I need more screen real estate. And they laugh at me. They're like, screen real estate, haha. But that's what it works out to me for, right? It's because I want to be able to design the game here and the scene, and then I can go in the game and then kind of work within there when I design stuff. So I start off with a much more room here in the editor when I do it this way. That's why I like doing it this way. And then I pull this little slider down to the left, so I create almost like a list as opposed to kind of like larger icons, okay? And this is where it starts. So this is good, but I'm going to make a mobile template. So one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this game, and I'm going to touch this game and change it from where it says game to simulator. And by default, you get the iPad simulator. You've seen this kind of stuff, so this should be a review for you. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to choose, typically what I'll choose is something like a Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, something that looks like this, okay? And in the scene now, as an example, my camera for the scene is also going to reflect that change as well. So if I look at the camera, then you're going to see that the camera itself is aligned. So that's what I'm seeing as well. Okay. One control that you can use fly controls again for the camera in Unity. So I can fly through. Again, I can hold down my right mouse button and kind of fly by using the WASD keys to navigate the entire scene. Okay, in Unity. This is in Unity 3D. Awesome. Okay, great. But what I really want to do is create a 2D scene because I want to start off with a menu, and this is one of the things that I'm going to do with you guys today. So we're going to start off with kind of a menu scene, and even though it's 3D, you can shift down to 2D. All right, so that's one thing we can do. So use a 2D context. And when I do that, you're going to see that the screen itself, even though the camera is in 3D, you can see that it's laid out like this. For the main camera, let's change the scenes. A lot of times, when I used to start with Unity, I used to change the structure of my scene so that it had an underscore in front of it. And now Robson can attest to this. I moved away from this because I don't do it anymore. I kind of use square brackets. This is just a new thing that I've learned how to do. And it's only over the last little while. I find that square brackets is something that I like to use more than an underscore. And I used to put square brackets around this so I can push up the important stuff up to the top part of my assets so it's easier for me to use and access. Let's add another one, which will be scripts. And again, I'm assuming that you know some of this already. So those two things are very important. We do scenes and scripts a lot. And so a lot of times I put square brackets around them so that they're at the top. Awesome. Also, in my scenes, I have this thing that's called sample scene. I want to rename this thing so it says it's main. Here's the main scene. Okay. And I can reload that scene. So the main scene inside of the scenes folder and in scripts. Awesome. What I want to do now is I want to change the main camera, right, from a 3D camera. I want to change it from perspective to orthographic, right? And what this is going to do for me is it's going to match a lot of times what I see in the viewport. So my simulator sees this, right? And you can't see it, but it's actually an orthographic view. What I also want to do is remove the skybox. So by default, the camera component, which is part of every camera. So my camera is just a game object that has a transform. All game objects in Unity have a transform. It has a camera component as well as an audio listener. I want to change my camera from having a skybox to solid color, right? I don't want to show the skybox anymore. So you can see my simulator is now looking like this, right? And this switching between simulator and scene is a pain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the simulator so that it's parked on the left and my editor is parked on the right. Okay. One other thing that whenever I make a 2D scene from a 3D scene is you can see that the near plane and the far plane are really wacky. 0.3 for the near plane and 1,000 meters for the far plane for a 2D scene is unnecessary. So we can remove this distance and go down to, let's say, approximately 100. So again, a few changes that we've made in terms of the way that the scene works. One negative point, and I got to point this out, is for the main camera, and here's the main camera. You can see now that the main camera, when I zoom in, right, is kind of directly aligned to what it looks like here in the editor. So I've got my Samsung Galaxy, S10 Plus as an example. I can kind of zoom down a little bit so I can see something that's kind of the same size. And this looks to me like something that is more palatable for me to work with as opposed to, having the default layout. So this would be more of my, my preferred layout. So I want to save this layout. So instead of tall, let's save this layout, and I'll call it, Tom's 3D mobile layout, and it'll be portrait. So this is when I want something that's going to be in portrait mode like this, not in landscape. We always want to also turn on something called the safe area. So on the left where we see the simulator, we want to turn the safe area on, and this is the area where you can easily plot stuff in your game. Anything outside of the safe area might hit the little cutout here for your camera, and if you're using an iPhone, if I switch to an iPhone as an example, and let's go for an iPhone XR, just as an example, you can see that the cutout is much bigger. Okay, so that's how it works. So let's go back to that Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, because that's how I've aligned and set up my emulator. So my phone and my emulator, which is an LD player, right, as an example. So I'll go back to LD player. I've gone into the settings for LD player, and I've actually customized the settings so that the model that I'm using is the resolution for it is something that looks like this, 2560 by 1440 with a DPI of 480. I've done this so I have a good reference resolution that matches the model that I'm going to be seeing in Unity. Okay. Again, you'll be learning about LD player and emulators as you go forward. For those of you who are interested, you can always download LD player and start playing with it now. So look up ldplayer.net. And again, it's a free download. Okay. And it allows you to play most of your games, even Magic the Gathering Arena, if you want to try it out with, what it looks like on Android. Okay, so this is pretty cool. I've got this set up, as an example. But if I'm going to deploy for you for Sunday, I mean, again, I still need the orthographic view for my menu as an example, but I'm going to be targeting Webgl. So instead of targeting the simulator, which is okay, that's fine. We can see what it would look like. We can plan for this thing. For now, we're targeting Webgl, so we can even avoid using the simulator altogether. For now, though, what I want to do is I want to click File and go to Build Settings, and I want to start by adding my open scene to the build settings. So make sure that your scene's main, or whatever you called it, is here and listed inside the scene. And right now, I've got PC, Mac, Linux standalone as the main platform, and I want to switch to Webgl. Right? So when I do that, I want to click Switch Platform. And this is something that you're doing for your in lab exercise 2, if I'm not wrong. That's due this Friday. Okay. So you can tell that it takes a bit of time to switch over, and that's good. Some settings for Webgl that I highly recommend that I'm sure that your TA gave you. We're going to go into player settings next, and in player settings, a couple things that we should change to the default company name. So let's call this Ontario Tech. All right, and the project name is okay the way it is. We're sitting in Webgl. You would have to make a different setting for each of these things. Inside my resolutions and presentation, that's the first setting that I want to change. 960 by 600 gives me a screen size that is a lot different than my phone size. Again, what you want to think about is something like 640 by 960. So 640 by 960, if I'm going to make something that looks like this, right, to emulate what this looks like, I may want to change to a resolution that makes sense on my web page, right? And this is like 320 by 480, the same aspect ratio that we used to have, but just double the resolution. Okay, 640 by 960. That's the first thing. There are 2 Webgl templates that are basic. You can choose the minimal version, or you can choose the default version. Leave it at the default version. Splash image I don't care about, but other settings are super important. Super important. I never want to use the auto graphics API. Let's turn that off. And by default, Webgl2 is the one that you want to use. Okay. Color space typically would normally be set to gamma. If it's set to gamma, switch it to linear. It's a better color space for what we're doing with Webgl. For an API compatibility level perspective, eventually what we're going to be doing is trying to set up our mobile devices so that they use .NET Standard 4.0. So let's change it to .NET Standard 4.0 right now. So that's the changes that I made here. Again, I'm using Webgl2. If there's another graphics API that's in here, like Webgl1, remove it. It should only be Webgl2. Webgl2 has a disadvantage in that it will not display properly on Safari browsers. And if we scroll down to the last change for under publishing settings, where it says, I want to use compression format of gzip, let's make sure that it's disabled. So those are the same settings that Steve and I worked out together when we were talking about your Webgl build. Close your player. So this is everything we need for Webgl. You've set up Webgl. That's great. And you've got your screen ready. Let's add a simple button to the screen that kind of goes in right here. And again, what you'd want to do is you want to create the button inside of your main. So right click and you want to create a 3D object, or sorry, a 2D object called a button. There's different kinds. You can use a button or a Text Mesh Pro button. I'm going to go with a regular one, right? And immediately what you're going to see with the button is that it's like way down here and super small. What typically happens with Unity is there's an abstraction between the canvas itself and the actual camera. What we're going to do when we're using, for this particular scene, which is your entry scene, instead of the button, as an example, being way down here and separate from the actual camera itself, we're going to change the canvas. So instead of screen space overlay, we're going to choose it so that it is screen space camera. And we're going to drag and drop the main camera from the scene into the area that it says render camera. And now when I go back to the main camera, you can see that the button and the camera is visible in the same area. The button, though, is really, really small. And one thing we want to do about the canvas is we need to change the Canvas Scalar so that it allows us to scale user interface items larger. And then, again, this is a preview of what Stephen is going to be talking about with you coming up. So instead of constant pixel size, let's go with the scale with screen size. And we need a reference resolution that we're going to use. Now, because we are using a resolution of kind of 640 by 960, that's kind of what we should do as well. So this should be 640 by 960. Same resolution that you're going to pull out to Webgl is the same reference resolution that you should use here. From a match perspective, what you want to do is you want to move to 0.5. You can actually put that so that it'll try and match the resolution of the screen, the canvas, with the resolution that your reference resolution. When you look at your button now, you can see that your button is like way off track. And what you can do with the button is you can kind of recenter it back to the middle. So let's put it back into the middle of the screen, which would appear right here. Again, if I'm going fast, it's okay. I'm just giving you an idea of how to build a very simple interface for Unity for yourself. One thing we know is we can't see, for whatever reason, we can't see the button. And the reason for this is because the text of the button, which is in here, right now is set to a font size of 14. What we want to do instead is use something called best fit. So click on best fit. And instead of 40, make it something like 80. And minimum size is 10, but I recommend something like 14. When we start doing that, if I pull these things aside and pull this down into Unity, what we can do is as we zoom forward, I can make the button size smaller or bigger. Do that change. I meant the button, not the text. So you can see I can make it so that the width of the button is something like 250, right? And the height of the button is something like 50. And I can still make sure that the button is centered in the X and Y coordinates in the center of the screen. Let's change the button so that it says start. Okay, so very simple kind of scenario. So things to review. I've made a change to the build target to Webgl, and I've added a button into the canvas, right? And I've changed the Canvas Scalar, which is a way of how we change the size of UI elements inside the canvas so that it has a reference resolution equal to what we're doing with Webgl. Okay, awesome. So now that I've got the start button, again, for your first playable release, it doesn't really have to do anything. I want to see kind of an idea of kind of your user interface, what it's going to look like for your menu and your main scene and maybe your end scene if you're going to go there, right? Again, I don't want to time out. I'm really actually, kind of low on time right now in terms of showing you everything. But one thing I want to do is build this for Webgl. How does this work? So first I'm going to file, save, then I'm going to file, save project. And once I've done that, I'm going to go file, build, and run. When I do this, I'm going to choose a new folder called builds. And in the builds folder, that's where I'm going to put in my my Webgl build. When I click select folder, I'm going to spark out for a second as this is going to try and build a very simple implementation for my app. It's going to take quite a few of my resources. In fact, and again, just to give you a sense of, even for me, it doesn't matter how powerful your system is. It tends to use as much of your GPU as you allow it to. Right, so for me, I've got, again, a 10900K, 64 gigs of RAM, and an RTX 3070, and it still takes up quite a bit of resources for you to do this. What this will do at the end is it'll generate, you can see me sparking out already, it'll generate a very quick web application that is runnable kind of in a web page, and it'd be the same screen that you're seeing right here. Remember that I'm using a 3D context. I'm just changing the camera so that instead of perspective, it's orthographic. And this is how I can make my scene. Other things to note while we're waiting, because I don't want to spend time, kind of just waiting for this thing, is we're going to talk about GitHub. And I talked about something like Gitkraken. I'm going to pull up Gitkraken right now and start thinking about putting together a a repository that's local. Again, I think it's a great user interface as an example for Unity because it's simple and allows us to do the things that we want to do. One thing to note is I don't want you to put things up on GitHub when Unity's open. I think when Unity's open, that's a bad thing. There's meta files. There's a bunch of stuff happening all at the same time. And if you try and, with Unity open, try and update GitHub or make a commit, you may have mixed results. Some people, it works fine. Other people, it breaks their build when they download it from Unity because it's missing pieces. And we're going to talk about those things in a second. So compiling the WebAssembly piece is the biggest part. You can see that it's already taken like almost 2 minutes for me. Again, I'm doing a lot of stuff here. I'm broadcasting live on Zoom. I'm also on YouTube. I've got an LD player on the background, which is right here, right? I can close some of these things down to increase my resources, but it's not going to really improve my build very much. Question for you guys. How long does it normally take you to make a Webgl build? Is it longer than a few minutes? Samuel says about 3. Fardeen says just a few minutes. Awesome. Ryan says it took me 12 minutes, if I remember. Oh, wow, that's amazing. So that's why you're so fast. So there's my Unity build, and you can see that for the most part, the kind of the reference size that I've chosen is okay. Not great, but it does look like a button. It works okay, and I have something that looks like a mobile build, kind of. You know, recommendations are that if it's this big, as an example, either what you may want to try is reducing the zoom level so you can see the bottom of your screen. And if this is so wide, typically a phone isn't like this in proportions. You may look at other phone aspect ratios to make sure that this is correct. Whatever you train your in your player settings to be is the output that you're going to have in your WebGL build. Okay, great. So I've done a WebGL build. I know it works. It's not great, but let's put it up on GitHub. So the first thing I want to do with this is I want to go into Unity, file, save project. As an example, let's turn this off. So bye-bye Unity. Why? I want to gracefully close Unity in order for it to close down all of its files and folders. And then what I want to do is when I pull up, no, I don't want that. When I pull up, Gitkraken, it's going to come with a screen that looks like this. What I want to do is I want to start a local repo. So here's some stuff that you need for your for Sunday. And with a local repo, I want to target the repo. Where is my build? I'm going to obviously go into Ontario Tech and inside of INFR3335U, but not inside my containing folder, not the actual Unity folder itself. If I did that, it'll make a repo instead of a repo. So come to this point. So you can see now that I have the containing folder, something that's holding your project, the folder that's holding your project. If I browse again, I can get a copy of what this looks like here, and then I can use that as the name of my project. I can choose a gitignore template like the one for Unity. This is the one I should use. What this does, this gitignore template will ignore your library folder as well as a bunch of other little folders and reduce your package size when you put it up on GitHub. All right. From a license perspective, I'm going to choose an MIT license, right? And then I'm going to create my repository. What this is going to do is locally, it's going to make an initial commit. It's going to be very graphical in the way that it looks. This is my local machine, and here's my initial commit, but there's a lot of staged files that need to be staged. I'm going to stage all changes at this point. And when I do, I need to make another little commit. I'm going to say added project files. And I'm going to click commit change to 35 files. Now you can see that I have two commits, an initial commit and an added project files commit. And I want to push this up on GitHub. I can do it right from here. It's going to say, hey, do you have a remote? No. Do you want to create one? Yes, I do. And when I do, it's going to ask me to connect. And if you've done this for the first time, it's going to ask you to connect your GitHub account online. I've already done that work. But if you haven't, it's going to ask you to do all that configuration. For me, I can choose Ontario Tech University, which we have. There's Ontario Tech University. I own that, Ontario University. And I'm going to put it up on INFR3335U, the same name as the lesson that I put up on Unity, right? I'm going to make it public, but you can choose private. And if you do choose private for your repositories for Sunday, make sure you add me as a collaborator. So I'm going to choose public and then click create remote and push local references. When I do so, it's immediately going to make the repository up online. And you can see now that locally and remotely, I'm aligned. Remember that I can always take a look at my remote by going to that to that site on GitHub. So github.com, and I'll go to Ontario Tech University. And if I go there, you're going to see that this is the lesson that I just put up. Okay, so here's the lesson link for you if you want to do what I did right now. One thing that I want to do sometimes is change my README file. Let's suppose I changed it, and I said that this is this lesson. I'm using Markdown again, and I can say this is a demo project for INFR 3335U, fall 2021 semester, lesson 3, right? And if I kind of add that as a commit online, then there's going to be a problem, right? The problem is that locally, I've got 2 commits, but remotely, if I go to my project itself, I have now 3 commits, which means that I'm 1 commit behind the master branch online, or the main branch. So locally, what I can do is I can pull. And if I do that, it's asked me to pull from the origin across the origin remote into the main branch. If I click submit here, then now I'm up to date. You can see again that I'm up to date locally and remote. Okay, so that's the way we do GitHub. And I'm documenting it for you to help you with your assignment. And this is the link. If you want to download mine and see if yours matches with mine, here you go. I'll put that up on Canvas later on today. All right, so that is the GitHub process. What I want to do now is relaunch Unity and add 1 script to it, and that's it. So again, what I want to do is I want to launch Unity. I'm going to keep Git Kraken open. It's not going to hurt to keep it open. I just can't do a commit until I've closed Unity down again. One thing to note is you can explore Unity Colab, because many students have challenges, especially teams have challenges how to share Unity. One of the biggest things we get is Fardeen says, been having trouble using Unity and Git Kraken. This has really been useful. Great, I'm glad. And that's what I want to do with you guys. I want to try and help as much as I can, because I know the TA's got limited hours. She's got about 1.5 hours with you, and I've got a little bit more time. So I'm going to add some of this with you as we go. So here's my start scene. I want to go into my scripts, and I'm going to add a brand new script. Okay, and we're going to call it the UI behavior script. So UI behavior. And in my UI behavior script, remember that when I make a script, it's in C#. It's a scripting language. It's not necessarily a programming language for us for Unity. On the back end, it gets converted to C++. You're going to learn about that. I'm using Visual Studio 2019 Enterprise, and I'm also using Resharper C#, which I highly recommend if you're programming. We talked about this kind of when we were together, at one point in the past, but I'm going to recommend it again. So Resharper, again, is a free tool that gives you code hinting and code coloring, and it's from the guys who made Android Studio. They're an outfit called JetBrains. And JetBrains makes Android Studio, and they make a lot of tools. And one of the tools that we want, if you look at developer tools, is Resharper, right? And there's Resharper C#, and there's Resharper C++. So it's part of the Resharper Ultimate, okay, package. Here's Resharper. One thing to note is you can sign up as with an educational account. So if you go to Education, JetBrains, right? Then there's a free educational license at JetBrains that allows you to get all the packages, the professional proprietary packages from JetBrains, which are very similar to the one I'm talking about is very similar to Visual Assist that helps you code a lot faster. So this is the link for that. Okay, so again, I encourage you all to subscribe to this. It's free for you being a student at Ontario Tech. You get access to everything, all the developer tools for free, and there's a ton of them. If you're a Java programmer, IntelliJ IDE is an amazing IDE. I prefer that when I'm doing that. And again, they produce Android Studio. And the best thing is this Resharper stuff, which I'm going to be using right now. So down inside of Unity, you can see that I've got some recommendations from Resharper, and it's telling me that, hey, there's some stuff here that you don't need or can be coded in a little differently than what it is right now. With Unity mono behavior scripts, you always get two functions to start off with, the start method and the update method. Again, I don't need any of these two methods here because what I'm going to make is my own. It's going to be a public function that returns void, and it's going to be called onStartButtonPressed. And we're going to modify this later on. The onStartButtonPressed function. Again, all I'm going to do right now is output some kind of console command. That's a debug.log, right? There it is. And it's going to say the start button pressed, start button pressed, right? And I want to wire up this script here with the start button. A couple ways to do this, but now that I've made this script, I can hook back to Unity. Let's go back to Unity. Here it is. And you can see that in Unity, I've got my UI behavior script, and I have in my canvas a button, right? My button itself, there's a bunch of different different components, right? And what I want to do is I want to drag and drop this UI behavior script right onto the add component button. So I'm going to go like this, whoop. And this adds the UI behavior script I just made onto the button and makes it accessible. What I want to do now is the on-click event that's part of every button. I want to click this little plus button, which asks for an object. Now I could hold this script in any place else. I can have it in a game controller or something else, but here I'm just going to attach it in this example in the button itself, which I've done. And then I can pull the actual button. Let's rename this button to Start Button. And we'll pull this Start Button down into the Start Button itself, so into itself. When I do that, then on the right, you can see that there's a function that I want to call. I can kind of scroll down to UI behavior and select my onStartButtonPressed event. And what this does is it wires up the button with my script. It connects my script to my button so that when I click the button, the script triggers. Okay, so I click onto this. And when I do that, once I click this, right, script, now it's wired. And I can test it in the simulator that's here. And if I press play, right, as an example, here it is in the simulator, right? You can see that it's running now. One thing I'm missing though, and I forgot with my layout, which kind of sucks, is I forgot, to put in a console. One thing is that I don't have a console window. Let's put the console and park it down in here so I can see the console at all times down in here. Let's try that again. So run it. And when I run this thing, now you see that it's running and I click start, then I'm going to see the start button pressed event down here. Awesome. Let's put this up on GitHub again and let's build for Webgl. So I'm going to go file, save project, and let's go into build settings. And I'm going to go into player settings and let's fix that problem that we had with our resolution. So resolution was like kind of out of whack. It didn't look right. It was 640 by 960. So kind of a weird resolution for what it looks like. I could choose a different resolution, for my iPhone if I want, or my Android phone that makes more sense. And you can look up the type of resolution that makes more sense for you. I'm not going to do that here to save time because I've completely timed out. But you would change this and it'd be more realistic to what it's going to look like. For now, I'm just going to keep it the same because it'll be an incremental build if I don't do many changes. And let's build it. So file, build and run. And when I do this, it's going to save everything and take the new information, the script that I just made, and build and run it for mobile. Again, even though it's an incremental build, guys, it's not going to be that much faster. And as you're going to see, because what it's trying to do is it's trying to convert from C++, which is the back end of Unity, right, to WebAssembly and make it runnable in the browser. And then I'm going to put this up on GitHub and then we're done for the day. And I've given you kind of a hint on how to start making your user interface. All right, questions so far? Anything that I've done that's wacky or that you haven't seen before, ask me while this is building, please. Anybody? And if you've seen it all before, and if I'm not doing anything new, that's awesome. That means you're going to be perfect for Sunday. Okay. And for those people watching on YouTube in the future, just fast forward past this part so you don't have to watch the WebAssembly build because it takes a bit of time. I'm not sure if it's exactly what you need to do, Ryan, for ILE2. I haven't looked at Steven's requirements for ILE2, but I'm doing it to show you what it looks like when I start building my user interface for my, for my start menu. I think WebGL is your first target, and the reason why I got Steven to get you to practice WebGL is because that's one of the outputs for your project part 1. I mean, I don't think so, Aim. I think I'm okay if you don't use mobile resolution. Okay, here's what I want to show you guys. What if I right-click and go inspect? Under the inspect, you can look at the console, and you can see a lot of details in the console. So again, I went to right-click, and then I went to inspect. That's what I did to get that. And then in the console window, if I click start, take a look down here. It actually does the start button pressed event right here. So you can actually do troubleshooting right in WebGL by using console commands, and it just appears right in your web browser. So pretty cool stuff. Do you want us to focus on the playable build for Sunday as a phone simulator, or is it okay to hand in something like our ILE2? I'm okay with ILE2. I'm showing you this so you can see how to start making it look more like a phone, and this is not quite the right resolution compared to making it look like a desktop app. But I'm okay. I'm totally fine with you using the your simulation that looks like more of a desktop resolution. Let's say 1024 by 768. I'm fine with that. All right, so now that we've got this, we've checked it out a couple times. We know it's built. Everything's fantastic. Let's file, save, and then file, save project, and then exit Unity and upload to GitHub, or just push to GitHub. So when Unity gracefully closes, I can push up my Git Kraken. Notice this message that says view changes. Let's click on view changes. I've only changed my main scene, and I've added UI behavior as a script plus the meta file. I'm going to stage all changes. I'm going to say something like added UI behavior script. That's all I really did. And then commit three files. And when I'm done committing, I can just push. And when I'm done, I've done a bunch of commits now. So if you look up online again, right? If I go up here and look at my my repository and refresh, you can see now that I have 4 commits, and it gives me timestamps for the most part of when they were all done. Okay. That's it for me for today. Hopefully that helped you and maybe did things slightly differently than you've seen already. The more you see it, the easier it's going to be for you to do for your ILE2 as well as for your project for Sunday. Would I recommend any other JetBrains add-ons? Nope, that's the main one, Resharper. If you can get Resharper running, and that would be running inside of your Visual Studio 2019, I highly recommend this. It's a great add-on, and it gives you amazing support. Like, for example, if up here it gives you this little light bulb that says remove unnecessary usings, and it'll do that for you nicely. Okay, so it actually makes your scripts a little bit better, and it helps you with additional details. Okay. So be careful though. Sometimes it gives you some wacky suggestions that can, if you're not used to it, can mess you up. But the great thing is that it also gives you recommendations on code hinting when you start coding. That's awesome. I'm glad that they're quick. Any other questions before we stop for the day? All right, so that's it for the tech demo. Let's just do one last piece of administration. So again, I'm just going to use my PowerPoint here to go and show you. Again, remember that for this week, assignment 1 is due on the Monday, so Monday the 27th, and that your first part, your project part 1, your first playable release, which is with the WebGL build, is due this week, Sunday. It includes a few requirements. Make sure you go through the requirements. Producers, make sure you go through the requirements and that you hit all of them, including making a small little video. All right. Okay, that's it, guys. I'm going to stop on YouTube, and that'll be it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll stick around for if anyone has any questions. And by the way, I did plan to finish early, but of course,